Someone leans across the table, or maybe it's a Slack message or a hallway conversation, and says something like this: "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but..." And what follows feels like a gift. Inside information, a heads up, someone trusting you with something they're not sharing with everyone else. But something about it feels off, and you can't quite name why. Here's why. What just happened wasn't an act of trust. It was an act of strategy. And the person who leaned across that table wasn't sharing information because they care about you. They were sharing it because sharing it serves them, and because they needed to see what you would do with it. Workplace gossip is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in professional environments. Most professionals think of it as social noise, the inevitable background chatter of people working in close proximity, sharing information, venting frustration, filling silence, something to ignore or rise above or stay out of. But gossip in a professional environment is almost never just social noise. It's information being used as currency. And like all currency, someone is always deciding who gets it, who loses it, and who gets left out entirely. When gossip is used deliberately, when it's deployed with intention by someone who understands its power, it becomes one of the most effective tools available for controlling narrative, managing reputation, and maintaining dominance in a professional environment without a single direct confrontation, without leaving a paper trail, without anyone being able to point to a specific moment and say, "That was wrong." That's what makes it so dangerous. And that's what makes understanding it so important. Today, we're going to talk about what workplace gossip actually is, where it comes from, why certain people use it, and what it looks like when it crosses the line from social noise into something deliberately weaponized. Now, we're going to talk about what to do when you find yourself in an environment where gossip is being used as a tool, whether it's directed at you or whether you're being recruited to carry it. Because here's what I've learned after 25 years of coaching professionals through some of the most toxic environments I have ever encountered. The professionals who navigate gossip most effectively are the ones who understand it clearly, not the ones who ignore it, not the ones who participate in it, the ones who can see it for exactly what it is and respond with intention rather than reaction. That's what we're doing today. I'm Christina Holloway. For over 25 years, I've coached senior leaders at organizations like Google, GE, and Spotify to architect their authority and navigate the high-stakes politics of the Fortune 500. On this channel, I show you how to recognize the power place hiding in plain sight and how to communicate with the presence that demands a seat at the table. And what I've learned is this: the most dangerous moves in a professional environment are almost never the obvious ones. Gossip is proof of that. That's what we're doing today. All right, so let's get started. Before we talk about what to do about workplace gossip, we need to talk about what it actually is, because not all gossip is the same, and the professionals who get into trouble are almost always the ones who treat it like it is. There are 3 types of gossip operating in every professional environment. Understanding which one you're dealing with changes everything about how you respond to it. The first is social bonding gossip. This is the most common and the least dangerous. It's the conversation at the coffee machine about someone's weekend, or the shared observation about a colleague's new haircut, or the low-stakes information exchange that builds familiarity and in-group identity among people who spend significant time together. Social bonding gossip is human. It's been part of how people build communities since long before anyone worked in an office. In small doses, it creates connection and reduces the friction of working alongside people you didn't choose. The reason it matters to name it here is that it often serves as the entry point for something more deliberate. Someone who wants to pull you into political gossip almost always starts with social bonding gossip first. They establish familiarity. They build a sense of shared confidence. They make you feel like someone who can be trusted with the small things before they graduate to the things that actually matter. The second is anxiety gossip. This one spreads fastest during periods of organizational uncertainty, layoffs, restructuring, leadership transitions, anything that creates an information vacuum. When people don't know what's happening, when the official channels go quiet and the rumor mill fills the silence. Anxiety gossip is what moves through a team. It's the speculation about who's being let go, the theory about what the new leadership actually means for the department, the story that someone heard from someone who heard from someone else. Anxiety gossip isn't usually malicious. It's a coping mechanism. People share what they've heard because sharing it creates the illusion of control over a situation that feels out of control. The act of passing information, even unverified information, reduces the psychological discomfort of uncertainty. But anxiety gossip has real consequences even when the intent is innocent. It spreads misinformation. It creates fear where there might not be cause for fear, and it gives deliberate political operators a perfect cover. Because in an environment full of anxiety gossip, the information they're seeding deliberately is almost impossible to distinguish from the noise. The third is political gossip, and this is the one that matters most for everything we're going to talk about today. Political gossip is deliberate. It's strategic. It's information being shared with a specific outcome in mind, and that outcome almost always involves shifting power, controlling narrative, or managing someone else's reputation in a direction that serves the person sharing it. Political gossip doesn't always look sinister from the outside. It often sounds like concern, like helpfulness, like someone keeping you informed. I just wanted to make sure you weren't blindsided. I probably shouldn't say this, but I think you should know. I'm only telling you because I trust you. Those phrases are not acts of generosity. They are acts of recruitment. The person saying them is testing whether you will receive the information, validate it, and potentially carry it further. They are building a network of people who owe them something because you now have information you didn't have before, and they gave it to you. The real message underneath every one of those phrases is the same. I want you to see me as powerful, and I'm willing to use someone else's reputation to demonstrate that power. Here's what I want you to understand about political gossip, specifically in the workplace. It is a political move, always, even when it's dressed up as friendship, concern, or professional courtesy. The person deploying it has made a calculation. They've decided that sharing this information with you serves their interests, and they're watching very carefully to see what you do with it. That doesn't mean the person is necessarily a bad person. Some people use political gossip habitually without fully understanding what they're doing. They've learned that information creates connection, that sharing secrets builds alliances, and that being the person who knows things gives them a sense of relevance and power they may not feel anywhere else. But it does mean you should pay attention, because a professional who navigates their environment primarily through information sharing, through gossip, through rumor, through the strategic deployment of what they know about other people, is telling you something important about how they operate. They believe influence comes from inside information, not from earned trust. And that belief is the foundation of something significantly more damaging than office chatter, which is what we're going to talk about next. Political gossip in the hands of someone who understands its power becomes something qualitatively different from office chatter. It becomes a precision instrument, and the professionals who use it the most effectively are almost never the ones who are the most competent, the most qualified, or the most genuinely valuable to the organization. They're the ones who have learned, often over years, often through careful observation of what works in their specific environment, that controlling information is a faster path to influence than earning it. I want to name what this looks like in practice because the pattern is specific enough to recognize once you know what you're looking at, and invisible enough to be genuinely dangerous until you do. The first mechanism is triangulation. Triangulation is the practice of using a third party to deliver a message, gather intelligence, or test loyalty that the operator doesn't want to test directly. It looks like this. Instead of coming to you with a concern directly, someone tells a mutual colleague who tells you and then waits to see what you do with it. Do you go back to the original person, or do you stay quiet? Do you come to the operator and report what you heard? I mean, every response tells that operator something useful, and that operator never had to put themselves in a vulnerable position to get that information. Triangulation is also how false narratives spread without a single provably false statement being made. The political operator doesn't say this person is incompetent. They say, I just hope she's getting the support she needs to the right person in the right moment. And the concern, framed as care, delivered with a sympathetic expression, does the work without the political operator ever being accountable for it. The second mechanism is narrative seeding. This is the long game, and it's the most damaging of the three. Narrative seeding is a deliberate, early introduction of a story about someone, before that person has had the opportunity to establish their own narrative with the people who matter. It works because of a well-documented principle in human psychology. The first story we hear about someone becomes the lens through which we interpret everything we observe about them afterward. If you hear, before you formed your own impression, that a colleague is difficult to work with, you will notice and remember every moment of friction in your interactions with them. You will interpret ambiguous moments as confirmation, and you will discount the evidence that contradicts the story because the story arrived first. Narrative seeding is why new leaders are sometimes undermined before they've had a chance to lead, why high performers in threatening environments find themselves managing reputations they never have built and don't recognize, why the professional who was excellent in their last role walks into a new one carrying a story someone else wrote about them. The political operator doesn't need to lie. They just need to speak first to the right people about the right things, with enough specificity to sound credible and enough vagueness to be impossible to directly refute. The third mechanism is loyalty testing. This is the one that catches the most principled professionals off guard because it looks initially like trust. Loyalty testing is when someone shares sensitive, confidential, or potentially damaging information with you specifically to see what you do with it. If you keep it private, you've demonstrated that you can be trusted with more. If you share it, you've revealed something about your own boundaries and your own network. If you push back on it, you've revealed that you're not a safe recipient for this kind of information. Every response is data, and the political operator is collecting it. I used to handle this with humor. When someone would approach me with, "Can I tell you something in confidence?" my standard response was immediate and consistent. I'd say, "You probably don't want to tell me. I have a big mouth and I can't keep a secret." And that was true. But it also served a purpose beyond honesty. It closed the door before the information could come through it, and it communicated something about how I operate without requiring a confrontation or an explanation. That approach works when you're dealing with a peer or someone with limited influence over your professional future. When you're dealing with someone who has a real authority or real access to the people who have authority over you, that response requires more nuance, which we'll get to in a moment. But what all three mechanisms have in common is this. They are designed to operate below the threshold of accountability. No single action is provably wrong. No single conversation crosses a line that can be clearly named. And the damage accumulates gradually through impressions, through stories, through the slow erosion of someone's reputation or relationships, or sense of what is actually true about their professional environment. And they are most commonly used by a specific type of professional. In my experience, that calculation is most often made by professionals who sit somewhere on what psychologists call the dark triad, a combination of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. That in professional environments produces a specific and recognizable pattern of behavior. Narcissism provides the belief that their needs and their advancement matter more than anyone else's. Machiavellianism provides a strategic willingness to manipulate and deceive to achieve those ends. And psychopathy provides the emotional detachment that allows them to do it without the guilt or empathy that would otherwise create friction. You don't need a clinical diagnosis to recognize this pattern in a professional environment either. You just need to notice when the behavior is consistent, deliberate, and systematically designed to serve one person at the expense of everyone around them. So that's not a difficult colleague, that's a political operator, and gossip is one of their primary tools. Next month, we're going deeper into this. We're going to name the specific pattern, behaviors, and personality types that create the most toxic professional environments and build a toolkit for surviving them. But before we get there, I want to give you something practical for right now, because understanding what's happening is only useful if you know what to do about it. When you find yourself in an environment where gossip is being used as a political tool, whether it's directed at you, whether you're being recruited to carry it, or whether you're simply navigating a culture where it's tolerated, there are 3 things worth doing consistently. The first is recognize it for what it is. This sounds simple. It's harder than it sounds because political gossip is specifically designed to feel like something else: concern, friendship, useful information. So the reframe I want to offer is this: anytime someone shares information about a colleague, a superior, or an organizational situation in a way that feels like it's doing you a favor, ask yourself one question before you respond. Who benefits from me having this information? If the honest answer is that the person sharing it benefits more than you do, if the information positions them as powerful, knowledgeable, or connected rather than actually serving your interests, you're looking at political gossip and you can respond accordingly. The second is protect your position. This means being deliberate about what you receive, what you share, and what you decline to carry. When someone comes to you with political gossip, your response doesn't need to be confrontational. It needs to be clear. The boundary statements that work best are brief, neutral, and consistent. I try to stay out of things that don't directly involve me. That sounds like a conversation worth having directly with them. I'd rather not weigh in on that one. Each of those sentences closes the door without creating conflict. They communicate your operating standards without requiring an explanation or an apology. And used consistently, they signal to the political operator that you are not a useful carrier of their information, which is ultimately the most effective protection available. Your reputation is built through 1,000 small moments of consistency. The professional who is known to stay out of gossip, to redirect rather than receive, and to operate with transparency is almost impossible to weaponize against. Because the narrative the political operator tries to seed lands differently when the person receiving it knows well enough to question it. The third is name the environment honestly. Gossip that is weaponized and tolerated is a leadership failure. Individual operators can see narratives and test loyalties, but they can only do sustained damage in environments where the culture allows it, where leadership doesn't model transparency, where accountability is inconsistent, where the political operator has been rewarded often enough that they have no reason to stop. If you're in that environment right now, if gossip's being used systematically and nobody above you is addressing it, that is important information about where you are. It tells you something about the ceiling of what's possible for you there. It tells you something about the values the organization actually holds versus the ones it claims to hold. And it may tell you something about how urgently you need to be building the options that exist beyond it. Gossip is one of the oldest and most effective political tools in any professional environment. It operates below the threshold of accountability. It damages reputations without leaving fingerprints. And it is most consistently used by professionals who have decided that controlling information is faster and easier than earning influence the hard way. Understanding it clearly, naming the mechanisms, recognizing the patterns, knowing what to do when you encounter it is one of the most practical forms of professional self-protection available to you. And it's only the beginning of what we're going to talk about next month. In June, we're going deeper. We're going to name the specific personality patterns and behavior types that create the most toxic professional environments: the narcissism, the dark triad dynamics, the deliberate chaos agents. And we're going to build a real toolkit for recognizing them, protecting yourself from them, and deciding when an environment is no longer worth your intelligence. If today's video resonated with you, if you recognize the mechanisms we named, if you're navigating an environment right now where gossip is doing real damage, I want to hear about it in the comments. Tell me which one landed hardest, because naming what's happening is always the first step toward responding to it with intention rather than reaction. My free communication toolkit is linked in the description below. It includes the boundary statements and frameworks we've referenced throughout this series. And if you're ready to work through your specific situation with a coach, my 90-minute strategy session is linked there as well. I'm Christina Holloway. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in June. Bye.